take the discussion forward with Mr. Hemel Zobalia, who's the partner at Deloitte India. Hi, Hemel. Good morning and good to have you on the show right now. Hemel, while we hear the new bill is simpler, what really has changed to make it simpler? What's been your reading so far?
I think it's a very good attempt to make it simpler, I would say. One is there are specific language which I mean easier to understand a common man. For example, changing the assessment year to using the word tax year instead of financial year tax year. They've done away with a lot of redundant languages, sections, and make it instead of multiple. Earlier we had this situation where you would say, oh, second proviso to explanation, and they made it very, very lucid. One more feature that they've added to make it simpler is more use of tables and formulas. Again, if I have to explain you something in a language, it will take me a lot of difficulty to explain you in language. But if it's table, a common man or a person can simply understand what TDS applies to me or how the formula is to be applied. So I think in that context, they made it really simpler and increased. The number of tables have gone up from 18 to 57. The formulas that were used in the old act were around 6, which have jumped up to 46. So I see the intent of the bill very clear to make it more friendlier, simpler, and for a common man to understand.
And that actually summarizes why the government kept saying that you will have lesser amount of words as well in the new income tax bill, given the fact that they've increased tables and formula in it. Good morning, Shell on the other side. So let me ask you something as a layman. Do you think there's any substantial changes which gives relief or increases burden for corporates or common man in this new income tax bill? How should one actually look at the bill and read into it?
So bulk of it is focused on simplification, and I compliment the government because they've really done it, a lot of it in simplicity. I think there are few things where they have tried to give relief or removed litigation. For example, there was lower withholding tax for which you could approach the tax office and ask, which was available only to some sections. Now they've made it to all the sections. So it becomes easier if you don't have so much of tax liability to pay, you can go to the tax office and kind of give it. There's also a question of decriminalization certain provisions. So I think people were a lot of worried. So I think there are some attempts being made to kind of decriminalize some of the provisions. Third, I think in relation to transfer pricing, where there was a lot of litigation on some of the provisions, let's say, for example, you have only one comparable, should a range of 3% apply or not? Even they've clarified that we will give you this relief, even if there is one available, or applicability between 92A1 and 2. So there were certain areas for corporates, I think it made it simpler. I guess for the common man, I would say that there is one change which is important, that earlier you were getting gratuity or pension, they were exempt in the sense that you had to report, but it doesn't form part of your total income. Now what has changed is that it is more like a deduction and not exemption, which means that you add it first to your total income and then subtract. What it means is government will have a greater idea of the real total income of an individual. So when they do their analysis, how many of them are more than 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs earning, they will get a better idea. So you will be, pushed to actually compute and actually mention what is the amount that is exempt now as part of your computation. So I think those are the areas where I believe there's some amount of changes, including relief. Couple of areas, since you asked about which could lead, I wouldn't say burden, but I would say some level of difficulty is, I think there is some amount when, if you are a manufacturing company, say paying 22% tax, which is at the lower end for the new manufacturing company, if you receive dividend and you pay dividend, earlier the set off was available. As per the new bill, it seems, I feel it's probably a miss. And then when representation is made, it will get corrected. But something important for a common man is that if you buy, you buy some, you sell some stock, you buy a residential house, you had to, and if you buy another one in a 1 year's time, the exemption is going away. But now instead of 1 year, they made it 2 years. So I think a person will have to keep a watch that they don't buy after claiming the exemption under 54F another house within 2 years. Otherwise, that relief will go away. So some of the minor things, I would say the substantive part, the focus is on simplification, but I see some of these things creeping in, which I'm sure as the select committee looks at it, they would factor representation from the industry and the stakeholders to make it and clarify some of these aspects.
What are the expected real-world implications of this change, and how are they expected to impact on ground?
So, interesting question. So, you would come back and say, Hemal, what does this mean, right? At the ground level, what changes does it mean? So, I think any simplification, if you go back, when the budget made changes to simplify capital gains tax, I think as it simplified, it laid a lot of issues too. So, any simplification would normally lead to also some level of litigation. Okay. But I'm quite happy to see that a lot of effort and care is taken that this doesn't lead to any new litigation. And they have done it by trying to ensure that they use the same words that were in the old act in the new bill, which means that if there were past jurisprudence judgments that were applied to the old act, equally applies to new bill. So I think, as they say, no news is good news. I would say no new litigation here is actually good news, because otherwise any change of this massive proportion would likely lead to litigation. But I see there is adequate care taken in terms of ensuring it doesn't happen. One more area I think I see at the ground level is to ensure that there are more powers given to CBDT, which means at ground level, it would mean that you don't need to make amendments in the act, don't need to go through the parliamentary process. CBDT itself can give out rules which are, at the, in easing the process. So there are a lot of powers given to CBDT, and that will, of course, enhance the ability at the ground level to make life easier and simpler for everybody, corporates as well as the common man.
Thank you so much, Emil. Really appreciate you taking the time out and simplifying what's new in the new income tax bill. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you.